YouTube. Thank you. So good evening. I'm Mayor Donalda Seegers and will be chairing this Silverstone public hearing this evening. With us tonight are District of Sechelt councillors. From staff, we have our Director of Planning and Development, Andrew Allen, and Planning Manager, Ian Hall. Ian will introduce and state the intended purpose of the bylaw amendments. He will be available to answer any technical questions you may have concerning the bylaws. Behind the scenes, managing this Zoom platform, we have planning and other staff recording your questions and comments and managing the speakers list, which you can see on the screen. They will be responsible for unmuting you when it is your turn to speak and muting you again when you are done. When we reach 8:30 p.m., if there are still a number of speakers on the speakers list, we'll be taking a 10-minute break. So I'm now going to call to order this public hearing convened under Section 464 of the Local Government Act. And the business items of this hearing are Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 492-26-2020 Silverstone, and Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 303-2020 Silverstone. Both amendments relate to a portion of two properties legally known as District Lot 1384, Group 1, New Westminster District, except part on Plan 14180, Plan BCP 31726, PID 015861660, and Lot A, District Lot 4295A, Group 1, New Westminster District, Plan LMP 43915, except Plans BCP 31726, EPP 31745, EPP 75215, and EPP 75917, PID 024694118. OCP bylaw number 492-26-2020 proposes to redesignate the site from the residential and multifamily mixed residential land use designations to the civic, institutional, and utilities land use designation. Bylaw 25-303-2020 proposes to rezone the property from Rural 1, RR1, to a new Institutional 1, IN1 zone. All persons who believe that interest in their property is affected by the proposed bylaws will be afforded an opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that are the subject of this hearing. If you have a written submission, please submit it to our planning department before the end of this public hearing. You can email it to planning@sechelt.ca or drop it in the mail slot at Municipal Hall up until the end of the public hearing. After the hearing is concluded, the complete file can be reviewed at the district office during normal business hours. Notice of this virtual public hearing was advertised in the newspaper, on the district's website, and social media. To participate this evening, if you have signed in using the Zoom application, to be added to the speakers list, please click the raise hand button. It's at the bottom of your screen, and a member of staff will reach out to you in the chat to advise you that you've been added to the speakers list. Once you've been added to the speakers list, staff will lower your electronic hand as confirmation. Please ensure that your Zoom screen name is set to your actual full name for clarity, and so that we can find you easily when it is your turn to speak. If you've dialed in with the telephone only, press *9 to raise your hand and you'll be added to the list. However, those calling in will only be identifiable by their phone number. So when it is your turn to speak, I will call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. If you are viewing this public hearing via YouTube and wish to attend the hearing to voice your comments to council, please go to our district website at sechelt.ca. On the homepage, in the bottom right, under What's New, the public hearing link will take you to information on how to join the Zoom meeting. Those who have registered to be on the speakers list will have the opportunity to speak first in the order as on the list. The name and addresses of persons who make written or verbal submissions will form part of the public record. When I call on you to speak, you will be allowed to address the meeting. You will have to unmute your microphone when prompted. On the Zoom app, mute and unmute can be selected on the lower part of the screen. If you're dialing in by telephone, the microphone is muted or unmuted by pressing *6. Please note that when staff enable you to speak on the Zoom app, you may be moved from the gallery into the meeting room. If that happens, there will be a brief transition period where it may appear that you've been disconnected. Please be patient, as this is only a momentary glitch and you do not need to log out. When speaking, please begin by stating your full name and address for the record. In the interest of time and comfort for those in attendance, we will be restricting your comments to 5 minutes. There is a timer on the screen that will count down your time remaining. At the end of your 5 minutes, I will let you finish your sentence and then interrupt you. If you wish to speak a second time, you will be given a second speaking opportunity after everyone wishing to speak regarding the proposed bylaws has spoken once. Anyone wishing to speak a second time will be limited to 3 minutes. To speak again, please raise your hand to be added to the next speakers list. This public hearing is a statutory process convened for the purpose of hearing from the public on the proposed bylaws. None of you will be discouraged or prevented from making your views known. However, it is important that all who speak at this meeting restrict their remarks to matters contained in the proposed bylaw. This public hearing is not the avenue to discuss or debate public versus private funding of long-term care facilities. Those comments should be directed to your representatives in other levels of government. As such, we will not entertain comments tonight on the provincial funding model of the proposed development. If you attempt to address funding, as chair, I will interrupt you and request you address the bylaw amendments before us this evening. Anyone choosing to persist with comments not related to the bylaws will be muted and moved back into the gallery. Again, if you go off topic, as chair, I will ask you to return to appropriate subject matter or stop your presentation. Members of council may ask you questions to clarify points that may not have been clear to them. Council will not enter into a debate with anyone. The function of this hearing is for council to listen to submissions brought forward with respect to the proposed bylaw amendments. After this public hearing, council may, without further notice or hearing, give whatever effect to the proposed bylaw it deems appropriate. The Development Planning Manager, Mr. Ian Hall, will now provide an overview of the bylaws, after which the applicant will speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, we're here for the public hearing for the Trellis rezoning application associated with the Silverstone long-term care home involving an OCP amendment bylaw and the zoning amendment bylaw. The facility would be up to 136 care bedrooms with the potential for an accessory hospice use and other related uses for the long-term care facility, all operated under the appropriate provincial acts and regulations. The subject property is actually, there's 2 properties involved, but it's a portion of those properties located off of the new extension of Derby Road near the Cowrie Street intersection. The subject property is primarily rural undeveloped land with some nearby residential land recently developed. The primary access for the facility would be off of Derby Road here, an approximate site plan showing the facility with the entrance off of Derby Road and associated parking, etc. For the OCP and zoning amendment bylaws, first reading was given back in the beginning of March, followed by a public information meeting held over Zoom at the beginning of June, with second reading of the bylaws given in the middle of June, and we're now at the public hearing. So the official community plan amendment bylaw is doing a couple of things. It's redesignating the subject area for the Trellis site from existing split designations to a single designation. So right now, the property at the Trellis site, if we have Derby Road along here, Cowrie Street here with the Trellis facility being located here, the proposed site is currently designated both residential and mixed multifamily in different portions of the site. There is an existing civic institutional utilities land use designation located immediately adjacent to the Trellis site. So the proposed OCP amendments aren't changing any of the land use policies. And this use is already contemplated in the OCP as part of these changes that were brought in back in about 2011, 2012 as part of a previous OCP amendment application that already contemplated future development in the form of mixed multifamily residential, civic institutional with a neighborhood center there. So right now, as part of this OCP amendment, this civic institutional designation is being shifted down to cover the Trellis site, with this area then being redesignated multifamily. And again, no changes to the actual land use designation policies. So in another view, the Trellis application site that would be a new property created through a future subdivision would be redesignated from its residential and mixed multifamily to the civic institutional land use designation. And then the area that formerly was the civic institutional land use designation would then become the multifamily mixed residential. In terms of the zoning amendment bylaw, we're creating a new institutional zone, an IN1 zone to cover the Trellis site. This zone would provide for a community care facility for long-term care, and that's regardless of any operational or ownership model. So regardless of who owns the property or what ownership model or operational model they're looking at for the facility, the zoning itself, the proposed zone, would allow for a facility of any type, as well as a variety of accessory uses, hospice, daycare, or adult day center, sorry, kitchen and dining facilities, et cetera, associated with the proposed facility. And again, the site currently being zoned rural 1, being rezoned to the new institutional 1 zone. There are a number of conditions that the council has endorsed to be met, both in advance of third reading of the bylaws, as well as in advance of adoption of the bylaws. So prior to the proposed OCP and zoning amendment bylaws getting third reading, the applicant will need to provide a detailed landscape plan that addresses both staff, council, and APC comments, as well as addressing SCRD board referral comments with respect to incorporating a public transit bus pullout in the design off of Derby Road. In advance of adoption of the bylaws, there are 2 covenants that will need to be registered on the title of the subject properties. One is respecting the properties outside of the Trellis development site to establish a buffer, a 10-meter wide buffer area on the west, north, and east sides of the Trellis development site, but off of the actual Trellis property on the original owner side. These covenants would serve to ensure any future rezoning applications associated with further residential development will have to address in more detail the landscaping and buffering around the Trellis facility to ensure that the development, the existing development and the future development mesh well together. So these covenants would establish a 10-meter wide buffer that would prohibit any land alteration or tree removal. And then as part of future rezoning applications, we would look at amending those covenants as part of those proposals. But it secures that additional review needs to be undertaken to ensure appropriate buffering in those areas. The other covenant would be on the actual Trellis property itself, and this is connected to the landscape plan itself because the institutional use does not trigger a development permit area. In order to actually have the landscape plan implemented, the covenant would need to be registered on the title of the property, and this then ensures that the landscape plan that's required would be implemented as part of that. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mary McDougall from Trellis Senior Services. This is the applicant, and I believe she's being brought in as a panelist. Welcome, Mary. Would you like to turn on your video and unmute yourself? Hello.
Hello there. Thank you. Sorry,
No
I'm
problem.
learning how to drive on Zoom. So
Mhm.
here we go. I'm trusting that now that I've shared my screen that it's showing Silverstone Care Center. Is that
Not yet.
not yet? May need Ian to
I can do that.
help us. What am I doing then? Share screen. I'll try that again.
There we go.
Okay, let's do a slideshow. Is that
That's perfect.
working? Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Mary McDougall and my address is 4315 Skyline Drive in North Vancouver, although I am the applicant or representative for Trellis Senior Services. And the purpose of the presentation is to give a very high-level overview of the features of what we are looking to do. In addition, the location Ian has already covered off in quite a bit of detail. So briefly moving through a bit of the features and design, highlighting the community benefits and talking briefly about the comments that we've heard from referral groups, as well as other topics related to land use, and very quick snap at the non-land use topics that we have also heard and are aware of before giving some brief final remarks. The location map provided here for Silverstone is a dated map because there's quite a bit of new development that has unfolded in the area of where the property is proposed. But the purpose of this is to show how close it is to the downtown area of Seashelt, as that previously had been a point of question, and specifically the distance to the hospital, of which from an operations perspective is not particularly relevant to me because many of our residents have clear do not resuscitate orders in place and are quite interested in staying at home for their peaceful enjoyment and passing. The features of Silverstone Care is that we will be a licensed long-term care home with up to 136 beds. And what that means is it's a purpose-built setting that is responsive to the needs specifically to end of life and palliative care requirements for complex health conditions. It is a very spacious layout that is particularly relevant in today's time of a pandemic for safety and modern aspects of lighting and engagement with nature that add to our health. As mentioned, the safety, the most significant item is that the entire building is single rooms, while there is locked access doors in a couple of areas for couples and or friendship options to have a connection in between the rooms. Each room is a single room with a private bathroom, complete with a shower. And that has been a feature that certainly with COVID has shown a priority. Another important feature is that this is public health care for 125 beds. We are not making the decision as to who is joining us to live at Silverstone Care, that it will be made by Vancouver Coastal Health, as well as establishing the level of user fee that will be set is set by the Ministry of Health. This is part of the public healthcare system. There will be, through the size of Silverstone at up to 136 beds, an additional up to 28 beds in the community for long-term care services that will be added, as well as a designated space for an adult day program to support interactions with people living at home. Through that, respite care is also offered and currently in place at Shorncliffe, as is hospice. And while there has been mention that the Hospice Society has moved in their own direction, in the interim time, we will be working with Vancouver Coastal in the provision of the hospice services as needed until the society is established in their direction. Ian had shown the concept building plan. The relevance of this is to view this as 4 quadrants, meaning 4 houses on each floor, where residents live in a small house setting as part of a larger neighborhood gathering. And again, that is a deliberate best practice design to support us while we age, where excessive stimulation and too many people gathering in an area can be quite disruptive and create behavioral triggers and or just personal discomfort, whereas a smaller setting is far more supportive while still allowing people to engage with the larger building in various ways through the common amenities. It has been designed with both the worker and the person living there in mind, so efficiencies as well as health benefits. The inside photos that are taken from a couple of our existing locations show how it really is a home. It is not anything of an institution. It is a gathering place for living and socializing and thriving and enjoying life at the stage where we find ourselves towards the end of our chapters. The community benefits that come from Silverstone Care is specifically seniors housing and very much special needs that are being attended to as it relates to dementia, responsive or complex behaviors, as well as chronic conditions that require 24/7 nursing and care support. It is an affordable project with 125 beds, as mentioned, as public health care, fully accessible. We're serving frail seniors with very limited mobility. Our building is fully accessible, and it has universal access through that public health care system link. There will be adult day, respite care, and hospice that's been mentioned, as well as there are meeting rooms that will be available to the community groups, and we are very active and interested in volunteer engagement and involvement, and in non-COVID times. Obviously, we're not able to do that right now. The project is a LEED Gold standard. It will, by the location of the bus pullout right at the front of our property, ideally promote active transit use, particularly for workers and visitors, as our residents do not generally leave the property. They are in a frail condition that is not something they do. We bring the community in. Bikes also are promoted, as is car share, and e-cars would be supported. We will be contributing jobs through construction, in the range of, on a daily basis on our existing sites, we had between 50 to 100 workers at different points of the construction, as well as development fees that would be contributed, and ongoing over 150 workers, together with the goods and services that we would purchase, and taxes, both local taxes as well as all other ones. This is truly a responsible project in the concept of sustainability, where it has social elements of serving vulnerable individuals at end of life. We are environmentally conscious through our design and economically committed to a sustainable operation. Comments that we've heard and that are known by the councillors with regards to the referral groups include the Sunshine Coast, no negative impacts. I don't really need to read through all of this in the interest of time. Bus pullout, Seashell Fire Department approved, BC Hydro and Fortis, health officer engaged supporting it, community association questions around OCP compliance, parkland, housing, and parking, and the Seashell Nation also with water conservation and the archaeology. The land use comment that we have specifically.
Okay, Mary, can we have you wrap it in another 2 minutes, please?
You bet.
Thank you.
Parking, we comply with the requirement. Traffic, we are below the threshold for the district and complying with what. I won't speak any more than to say with the other comments that are non-land use is that we're listening and we've heard them. We support the recommendations of the Office of the Seniors Advocate report, and we are very actively aware of the impact of COVID and working with our partner the health authority to address risks in that area. In conclusion, we are a long-term care home, public health care that's needed with a modern, safe design, local workforce, taxes, and economy. It is owned by myself and my husband, Dan, with a commitment to creating joy in life and aging. And we are really one step towards improved health services on the Sunshine Coast. Thank you.
Thank you. So councillors, any questions? And Mary, you could probably stop sharing your screen. Perfect. Thank you. Any questions by any councillors?
Hello. Hello. Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Councillor Lamb, yes.
I just looking at the layout of the room. There doesn't seem to be any closets or anything. It just looks like there's a desk. What would the furnishing be like in the room?
Mary, can you answer that?
Thank you for your question. There is in each room a wardrobe that is provided, as well as a chest of drawers, a night table, resident chair, as well as a fully electric bed for positioning and support. So each of the rooms is complete with a full set of furniture provided.
Councillor Lamb, anything further?
No, yeah. I mean, I'm sort of understanding that the purpose of this. It's not. Yeah. No, I'm very comfortable. Thank you.
Okay. Any other councillors? Questions? All right. So we'll now invite attendees to provide verbal submissions regarding the bylaw amendments. And I will first call for submissions from those who've signed onto the speakers list, which you can see on the screen. Before you begin your comments to council, please state your name and address for the record. And right below where your name is, it has the timer. It will be starting at 5 minutes. It will count down. Again, I will let you finish your last sentence after we hit 0, and then we will ask you to sign up again if you have further comments. So our first speaker is Davy Sangara.
Thanks, Darnelda. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm actually just chiming in as a neighboring property owner.
So first of all, Davy, your name and full address, please.
So my name is Davy Sangara, and the full address is 6013 Sunshine Coast Highway, which is that's actually the address on the property of our tax bill for our remnant parcels.
Thank you.
My brother and I are landowners surrounding this property, and I'm just chiming in to express that we are extremely supportive of the application, and we feel that it's really good for the future of the community. I think that it's overdue that we have a new healthcare facility on the Sunshine Coast. Mary had mentioned things like bus pullouts. When we finished the upgrade of Derby Road and when we built Cowrie in phase 1 of our residential development, we built bus pullouts as well, which brought transportation to the area. And frankly, I think that this application and the construction of the project will be the nexus of future development in the area, which will bring some services out of the downtown area because we have a commercial center as well. So ultimately, we'll see things like a pharmacy in the area and other ancillary services which support the Silverstone care facility. And as neighboring property owners, we're delighted to see this project going forward.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? No questions. We'll move on to our next speaker. Mike Clausen, representing BC Care Providers Association. Please start with your full name and address.
My name is Mike Clausen, and I live at I live at 758 East 27th Avenue in Vancouver. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for this opportunity to speak in support of the Silverstone long-term care home zoning application. I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish and the Sechelt First Nation. I thank each of you for your public service during this difficult time during the global pandemic. I'm acting CEO of BC Care Providers Association, a nonprofit organization that represents non-government providers of long-term care, assisted living, independent living, and home health. Our members provide approximately 2/3 of elder care in the province, beside government-owned operated care providers that provide the other third. On the occasions that I have visited the Sunshine Coast from my base in Vancouver, I know Sechelt to be one of the most beautiful parts of our province. It's no wonder that so many people are attracted to your community away from big urban centers, particularly as retirement and a slower pace of life beckons. According to the quick statistics from the 2016 census I referenced from Stats Canada, approximately 30% of residents on the Sunshine Coast are age 65 or older. The median age is reportedly 54 years old. These numbers look like a lot of parts of Canada today. Sechelt, like many towns throughout BC, must prepare for the rising demographic tide happening all around us. This will include constructing new housing in partnership with the provincial government to meet a growing demand for aged care services. Over the past few years, I've watched as many Sechelt residents have demanded their voice be heard on the future of long-term care in their community. The discussion has largely focused around the business model rather than the important factors such as health outcomes, resident satisfaction, workplace harmony, and availability of services. These are all important questions, as is whether the operator behind Silverstone can meet the high expectations of the residents of Sechelt. In my role at BC Care Providers Association, I've had the occasion to work for several years along CEO Mary McDougall. In fact, Mary is a former board president of our organization and a recognized leader in our community. So luckily, though, you don't have to take my word for it on how effective Mary is in creating a great experience for her residents. Last year, one of her employees at a site in Kamloops named Crystal Clark won the BC Care Awards Care Provider of the Year and was honored by Minister Adrian Dix at a ceremony in Victoria. Building a great workplace culture is a critical ingredient to delivering the best care possible. I know that the company is going to bring their A game to Sechelt. It must also be acknowledged that the long-term care sector in Canada has struggled during the pandemic. There have been endless discussions in our sector as to why this happened, particularly in Ontario and Quebec, but as well at selected hotspots in BC. One of the most common threads is the spread of COVID-19 has been the aging infrastructure and multi-bed wards. When you have only a curtain between you and someone else with an infectious disease, you're very likely to get it. The Silverstone long-term care home will not only have a modern and pleasing design that fits well into the Sechelt surroundings, it will have state-of-the-art single occupancy rooms. These will provide some of the best insurance against outbreaks as we adjust to the new normal. I'll wrap up my remarks at this point and welcome any questions for council, but needless to say, as a strong engaged member of my own community, I would be delighted to have a brand new care home as a neighbor operated by the applicant before you here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from councillors? Seeing no questions, we'll move on to our next speaker, Dr. Jim Petzold. Please start by stating your name and your full address. Okay, we can't hear you, so you must unmute yourself. Okay, we can't hear Dr. Petzold. He's unmuted. Perhaps we could have him go out and come back in again. And we can move on to Mark Penny. Thank you. Marg, your full name and address, please. Sorry, and you need to unmute yourself, Mark. Okay, Marg is still muted. We have 25 attendees watching this evening. All right, we're going to take Marg out and try Anthony. Thank you. Anthony, please unmute yourself. State your full name and address, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Well, thank you. My name is Anthony Urquhart. My address is 5973 Calvary. I submitted written submissions, and I'd like a few moments, please, to hit some of the high points and I have some additional comments. I am opposed to the proposed rezoning bylaw until such time that the West Seashell Connector Road is first built. And my primary concern is because of the traffic. I'm an impacted property owner. I live in an area called Trail Bay Estates. I've been there for 4 years. You may know this area. It's a very narrow road. It's quite windy with poor sight lines. It's recently, with the connection through to Derby Road, turned into somewhat of a connector road, although our section is not designed as a connector road. It's too narrow and too hazardous. It's more in keeping with a local road, which was its original intention. With the increased traffic, since the push through to Derby, there's a hazard in our area. When I'm doing gardening in my front yard, I'm close to cars going by, some of them at high speeds. There's no posted speed limit there. I assume it's the default speed limit of 50 kilometers an hour, but let's face it, who follows that? The vehicles often driving by are in excess of 50 kilometers an hour. Even coming out of our driveway is a hazard at times. I have immediate neighbors who have recently built homes, all unaware at the time that Cowrie Street was being pushed through to Derby Road. They have landscaping in place, we all do, in our driveways, all close to the traffic. I have to question why the district gave recent approvals to my neighbors for their homes at such a time when it must have been known that Derby was going to be connected up with Cowrie and this increased traffic. I'm very concerned about the further increase of traffic through our neighborhood with this Trellis long-term care project. And on top of that, there's a subdivision under construction right away with rumored 225 homes coming through. And on top of that, we have increasing traffic from existing West Seashell. I'd like to remind everybody of the 2010 official community plan that states that extension of Cowrie and or Barnacle Street to Derby Road should not be constructed until Derby Road is connected to the West Seashell Connector. Now that has not been followed. Derby has been connected to Cowrie without there being first completed the West Seashell Connector. I'm not a NIMBY person. In principle, I do support the Trellis long-term care project. At some point in time, I may well need it myself, but my support is contingent on there first being the West Seashell Connector. I'm concerned even about the construction of the facility and all the construction vehicles that will be going through our neighborhood on this this very narrow, windy road. And that's going to present an additional hazard. After the construction is finished, you're going to have the employees of the facility and the visitors, etc., traveling to and from the proposed project. all through a road that is not suited. So my opposition is really because this should be contingent on there first being the West Seashell Connector. My understanding is that in many municipalities, they require the developer to build such roads. My suggestion is that this developer be responsible for the construction of the West Seashell Connector, and that be a term before this rezoning application is approved. And on top of the traffic volume, there's also the increased noise that does adversely affect our enjoyment of life in our community, which has drastically changed with the push through to Derby, and is even going to further worsen with the proposed project. So again, I'm not trying to be a NIMBY or anything. I just feel that the project is a good one, but first of all, the infrastructure has to be put in place, and that is first having the West Seashell Connector Road. And those are my comments. I'm probably over time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Urquhart? Seeing no questions, we will move on to our next speaker, Dr. Petzold. See if it works this time. We still can't hear you. Okay, so they've just put up the phone number. You can join by phone, and we can hear you that way as well. So let's move on to Marg Penny. Marg, if you unmute your microphone.
There, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you very
So
much.
so start by saying your name and your address, and then you'll have 5 minutes.
My name is Marg Penny. I'm a resident at Shorncliffe Care Home, 5847 Medusa Street in Seashell. I am here with 4 other residents of the care home, and I have submitted this question before, and I will do so again. And that is, why were the residents who live here, the people who are going to be most impacted by the decision to move us there, not consulted? Why did we not have a chance to say something? I also have 4 other people here with me, and I would like to give them an opportunity to ask their questions at the same time.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Neil Frost. I'm a resident here at Shorncliffe also. My question is for the owner of Shorncliffe, who stated that they have not put any restrictions or something or asked for anything, any terms. They have demanded that they do not accept anyone who is classified aggressive or violent, not only at this facility, but at the one that she has in Vancouver. What does she have to say about that?
So Mr. Frost, that is a conversation you'll have to have with the owner herself and with Vancouver Coastal Health, because that does not have, I'm sorry, but that doesn't have anything to do with our conversation this evening. This evening, we're looking at zoning and OCP amendments. We have no jurisdiction over that question that you're asking.
It's difficult to get any questions such as that answered by anybody because they don't make themselves available only at things like this, which is a public hearing. I thought you were addressing the concerns of the public, and as a resident who lives here, my concern is for the other people who cannot speak in this facility.
Okay, the applicant is in the gallery. She's one of the attendees. Her and her husband are here. We'll make note of the question and we will pass that on. And I'm sure she's making note of that as well.
Anything else?
Well, this is Lori Dixon. I'm also a resident here. And I want to add my voice to that of Neil. We did attend another hearing earlier this year in June, and we were not able to get any of our answers there to questions that we still have outstanding, Neil being one of them. And we're getting concerned as time goes on that we're not going to be answered at all. And so I'd like to make sure that you're very well aware of the fact that we have not been consulted and we have not had a chance to be heard and answered. It's a very concerning thing.
Thank you, Lori.
Brenda?
No?
I mean, that's the three counselors that are present should know about those concerns. If they are on the Seashell board, you should, I hope, hear the concerns that we have and address them.
Yes, we hear your questions and your concerns. You could actually email them to us or write them and get them to us. Unfortunately, they don't have anything to do with the official community plan or the zoning bylaws that we're discussing this evening. But that doesn't mean
I would
your
like to tell you,
aren't an
that
issue.
I did send this question in before your last Zoom session, and I also put it in during the Zoom session, and both times you refused to address it.
Yes,
I'm sorry, that was not our session. That was a public information session that was put on by the applicant themselves. This is the first session that we've had.
We're still not getting answers.
Okay, can you make sure that we have those questions?
I will do so, and I will also let you know that we are trying to also meet with Vancouver Coastal Health to ask them those questions as well. And perhaps one of you would like to attend that meeting when we get it set up.
Please get a hold of me.
I will, thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker, Brian Myhill-Jones. Start by stating your name and your address, please.
My name is Brian Myhill-Jones. I live at 6155 Oracle Road. You're hearing me, I take it?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Okay. My address is very close in that area of West Seashell, about 2 blocks away from the proposed site of the Silverstone care facility. I have absolutely no concerns regarding its proposed location. In fact, I believe that it's important to include our seniors, many of whom have lived in Seashell for many years and contributed to our fine community. And they shouldn't be excluded at this time of their life, but rather should be embraced by our community to keep them in a more residential community, to help them feel included and welcomed. And the Trellis building appears to me to be much less institutional appearing than many other long-term care facilities throughout BC. And it would seem to appear attractive in a residential neighborhood. So that's one of the reasons I have no concerns about it. As I must say, having said I have no concerns, the person, I believe it's Mr. Urquhart, who lives on Cowrie Road further down. I think he had some very good points about this street. That is very narrow. And I think it would be incumbent upon Seashell Council to look at what alternatives there are to using that street, in particular for construction traffic. Now, that's not my street. It doesn't affect me directly, but I do think that's a very valid point. It's a very narrow street. I travel along that street frequently. But that's a different matter, I believe. I've been a physician in Seashell for 45 years, living in this neighborhood. I still see long-term care patients on a regular basis in the 3 different facilities on the coast. And I'm strongly in support of this initiative to rezone for the benefit of those patients I think it's important, as I said earlier, to make them feel welcome in our community still.
Thank you. Any further comments? Any questions from councillors? All right, we'll move on to our next speaker, Dr. Petzold. We'll try and see if this works this time.
Can you hear me? I'm by phone.
We can hear you. That's good.
Awesome.
So your name and
Technically
address,
challenged.
please.
Thank you for your patience. My name is Dr. Jim Petzold. My address is 2731 Roy Road in Roberts Creek. And I wanted to address the council and express my views as a physician who's lived on worked on the Sunshine Coast for 40 years. Like Dr. Mile Jones, I've good working knowledge of the long-term care facilities on the coast. And I am well aware of the dire need we have for additional long-term care beds in our community. That need was expressed several years ago, and as a result of our ongoing requirements that were worsening because of our aging population, 5 years ago, Vancouver Coastal set out a request for proposals to create a new long-term care facilities. Now, 4 years ago, approximately 4 years ago, they finally signed a deal with Trellis to build the proposed Silverstone care facility. And not to spend too much time in this, but I think council is aware it's been a lengthy process to get to where we are. In the meantime, the long-term bed requirements have increased, and we continue to face a dire situation of overcrowding at our hospital. And the main point I want to make to council is how badly we need this new facility. Our hospital is continually running overcrowded. Our occupancy rate in December was 168%, which means for roughly 50-bed facility, we were accommodating over 75 patients. So the question is, where do you put those 25 extra patients that you don't really have room for in your hospital? Well, you put them in corridors, you double up in beds that were meant, in rooms that were meant for single beds only, you put them in inappropriate locations. As it stands now, the second floor at our hospital is occupied almost entirely by long-term care patients who do not need to be in hospital. The only reason they're there is because we do not have enough long-term care facility beds in our community. This overcrowding, as I had mentioned in many letters to the editor and the Coast Reporter, has created really lousy working conditions at the hospital. And has also created unsafe working conditions, both for physicians, nurses, care aides, etc., as well as inappropriate care being received by these long-term care patients who are just basically waiting for placement. So what I'm getting at is our need is great. It is worsening. It has been going on for the 5 years or longer that this process has been going through. I think we're finally reaching the end, and hopefully things can proceed well from here. I was very grateful for Mike Klass and the comments he made regarding COVID. Because right now, one of the major identifying factors for long-term care facilities in terms of the risk posed to patients or residents from COVID is the age of the facilities. And many of these facilities we hear the horror stories about from Ontario and Quebec are very ancient facilities which by no means meet current standards for long-term care facilities. One of the absolute worst aspects of these facilities is multi-patient rooms. We know that the standard of care nowadays is one patient per room in long-term care facilities to decrease the spread of not just COVID, but any infectious disease, including influenza. Currently, one of our long-term care facilities that Silverstone is meant to replace, i.e. Totem Lodge, which houses roughly 50% long-term care patients, most of the residents there are living in 4 bedrooms. 4 residents rather, sharing one toilet and one not really very large room. totally inappropriate and this totally does not meet standard of care for long-term care facilities. So Silverstone offers a fresh new building which is totally up to date in terms of standards of care. And I just wanted to emphasize again to council how badly we need this facility, and I certainly hope you do everything you can to facilitate the expeditious build. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Petzold? No questions? So we have no more speakers on our speakers list. If you're attending the meeting and would like to present to council, if you're on via Zoom, please raise your hand. The raise hand is at the bottom of the screen and we'll add you to the speakers list. If you've dialed in by phone, I believe it's *9, we'll raise your hand and we can put you on the speakers list. All right, there are 27 attendees. So is there anyone else who wishes to speak to these bylaws? To indicate your wish to speak, please raise your hand and we will add you to the speakers list. All right, we have someone added in. Okay, so we have a hand raised in the gallery. Can we move them on to the speakers list? Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Henderson, name and address, please.
Hi there, John Henderson, 6137 Seashell Inlet Road. I'm speaking in two capacities tonight. One personally, and the other as the chair of the Seashell Chamber. Speaking personally, I've had quite a bit of experience with long-term care facilities, and I would encourage council, I think additional facilities, not just Trellis, but certainly Trellis to start, are vital. I have, as I said, I've done a great deal of research into what is possible and what helps make a community successful. I've also dealt with this on behalf of my late mother. Trellis is an ideal solution to some current challenges that we face. And frankly, I'm more interested that it's a model that hopefully others will emulate, other care providers. Since we need more rooms, of course, than what Trellis has been contracted to provide. I'd echo the comments that Davey Sangera and Brian Myhill-Jones, among others, have mentioned that the location is actually terrific. To be located within a broader community is ideal. I've always felt that Totem beside the hospital is less than ideal. On behalf of the Chamber, we see Trellis as a strong addition to our community, and our business members stand ready to support Trellis and all the people involved in operating the facility. We believe that a balanced and vital community includes a variety of amenities and services. And given that Seashell has an older population, more and more modern seniors care facilities are particularly necessary and appropriate. Somewhat off topic, but very much related, the Chamber has a concern that zoning in Seashell needs to encourage adequate facilities and land for appropriate housing to support the people that will be working at the Trellis facility. Of course, understand that this does not directly relate to the zoning being considered here tonight. However, a truly integrated and successful community means that we need to have such zoning in place. So in due course, I hope you will direct staff to bring back some options to help build more of these vital parts of our community. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Henderson?
Did I
No
give Councilor
questions?
Lamb a headache?
No, I think he's listening.
He's
All right. So while the hearing has gone on, we have been receiving emails. If you have written submissions that you want to get to us, please submit them now to planning@seashelt.ca, or you have probably a couple more minutes to drop them in the mail slot to have them as part of the record. If there's anyone else in the gallery who would like to speak, please raise your hand. Instructions are on screen here. You can click the button at the bottom of the screen or press *9 to raise your hand, and you'll be added to the speakers list. Okay, Mr. Urquhart. So this is your second time up, Mr. Urquhart, so we'll give you 3 minutes.
Yes, I don't even need that. I just have
Okay.
another comment to make, please.
Okay.
I am not alone in
Sorry,
my.
sorry, Anthony, your name and address, please.
I'm sorry,
For the record.
again, it's Anthony Urquhart, address 5973 Calvary Street,
Thank you.
just down the hill from the proposed development.
Okay.
Just want to add, I'm not alone. I've spoken individually to 8 of my immediate neighbors, and we're all very concerned about the traffic problems as it exists now. And on top of that, we're concerned about the traffic problems that are going to be enhanced with the proposed development, all going through our little skinny portion, windy portion of Calvary Street. And again, I'm imploring council to make it a condition of this rezoning and development that there first be constructed the West Seashelt Connector Road in order to preserve our community and our enjoyment of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other attendees that wish to speak? Please press *9 on your phone to raise your hand, or press the raise hand button at the bottom of the screen, and we'll add you to the speakers list. So I'll call 3 times for speakers. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to these bylaws? To indicate your wish to speak, please raise your hand, either through *9 with your telephone, or raise your hand at the bottom of the screen if you've entered via Zoom. Thank you. We have 2 speakers to be added to our speakers list. I'll be identifying you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. So we'll start with number 152. Please state your name and address for the record, please. And you'll have
can you hear me?
Sorry, yes. And just to the timer, could we give them 5 minutes? This is their first time speaking. Thank you.
How do I get this off mute?
We can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me?
We can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh,
fine.
I'm sorry. I didn't quite
That's
know
okay.
how to get it off mute.
Okay.
Anyways, my name's Catherine Nocenti, and I live at 5763 Tawanak Place in Seashell. And I have a concern. I'm finding this meeting a little biased. You made it quite clear at the beginning that it was about rezoning. So
Yes.
I'm wondering why Dr. Myhill Jones, Dr. Petzold, and John Henderson could go so far off the track, and you didn't tell them, 4-bed wards, things that Totem had nothing to do with rezoning.
Yes,
They
that's
sort
true.
of digressed off the topic, and you didn't stop them.
They're talking about the care of the facility. Yes.
Yes, but that is not a rezoning issue. You made it very clear that you were going to tell people that is not a rezoning issue. So I just think that some people got preferential treatment. So
Okay.
I just wanted to voice my opinion.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So number 978. Start by speaking your name and address, please.
Hello, I'm Tom Friesen, 5719 Naylor Road.
Okay, Mr. Friesen, you must have some other, you might have the computer up as well beside you. You'll need to mute one or the other because we're getting some feedback.
Okay, I'm gonna turn it off.
Okay, Tom Friesen, 5719 Naylor Road. And my concern is when the sewer gets hooked up, is the taxpayer going to pay for it, or is Trellis going to be the one paying for it?
Okay, we'll make note of that. You're still having a lot of feedback. You must have two devices hooked up, Mr. Naylor, or Mr. Friesen, sorry.
It's my wife.
My wife's trying to
Okay.
shut it off.
Okay,
Okay.
that sounds better.
Okay, so did you hear my question?
Yeah, question is about sewer. Okay, so
Yeah.
staff will make a note of who pays for their connection to sewer. Yes. So
Okay,
staff will
thanks.
make a note of that, and that will be one of the questions that's addressed in the comments that come back.
Thank you.
Thank you. So is there anyone else who'd wish to speak to these bylaws? To indicate your wish to speak, please raise your hand. If you're on a phone, *9 will raise your hand. If you're signed in via Zoom, you can click the raise hand button at the bottom of the screen. I'll ask again. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this bylaw? Thank you. We'll move you into the speakers list. Barb Work, please state your full name and address, please.
Barb Work, and I live at 5575 Mason Road in Sechelt.
Thank you.
And it's kind of a toss-up between a question and a comment, because relating to the proximity to the hospital and the noise maybe perhaps created by ambulances and stuff.
Okay.
Mary's response was, it's of little concern basically, because most of the residents or many, she said, have DNRs, which is do not resuscitate orders,
right. Mm-hmm.
but many don't. Like as stated by, as you can see plainly by Marg et al. From Shorencliff, they would probably want to be taken to the hospital. So there's many more like them in the home. So you're combining two homes. And the other is about the, I guess it's more related to, but just have to say, if many of these people won't be able to go into that home if they show any signs of violence and stuff, that's very interesting to me, unless it would include all the residents of the Sunshine Coast that are in homes already. That's a big question for me. And that's about it. I just want some questions from answers to those. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. So anyone else who would like to speak to these bylaws? If you're on a phone, press *9 to raise your hand. If you're signed in using Zoom, click on the raise hand button at the bottom of the screen and we can add you to the speakers list. So for a second time, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this bylaw or these two bylaws in front of us? And the final time, I'll ask once more, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to these bylaws? *9 on your phone or the raise hand button on the Zoom. Thank you. We'll move you into the speakers list. So last three numbers are 961. Please start by stating your name and address, please.
My name is Trish Michelli. I live in Delta, 4677 Cannery Place.
Okay. And your comments?
I have a question. I own a lot on Barnacle, and I have concerns about traffic as well. We haven't built yet, but we will in the future. So I guess my question is, and maybe this can be answered now, I hope it can be, what happens with all these concerns raised this evening? What is the next step? Are these questions and concerns logged by yourself, by somebody else here? Where do they go? And will there be another hearing to address these questions presented tonight? I guess I'm in agreement with, was it Mr. Eckhart, who lives on Cowrie?
Mm-hmm.
I do know that street. I'm very familiar, obviously, with the development there, Trail Bay Estates, as I am part of it.
Mm-hmm.
That is a big concern with that street. It's a very windy, twisty, small residential street. And while I think the idea of the Silverstone Care Facility is wonderful, I have an elderly father myself. I think it is a wonderful idea. And those old elders deserve something lovely, state of the art, modern and pleasing, as it was said earlier. But I also believe the residents in the neighborhood, such as Mr. Eckhart, also deserve a nice ending to their life and a nice area to live in, without problems and noise and such, and ambulances possibly. And yeah, so I'm just wondering, I guess, expressing my concern for the noise disruption possibly to the people that are currently living there and deserve to, and wondering where these concerns go from here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Tonight, this is being videotaped. It's also being broadcast on YouTube. We have staff behind the scenes who are recording questions as well. They will go through this public hearing as well and make sure we've captured all of them. And they will come forward to council in the report of the public hearing. And they will be addressed by staff in that report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question for the last speaker.
Okay.
I wasn't clear on your concerns around traffic impact. So could you just reiterate that? Or was it more concerned with the noise impact of construction?
Trish?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. I have a lot on Barnacle. So I guess I was mainly concerned with traffic and noise, and one causing the other.
Okay, so that'd be traffic on the part of Cowrie that goes to Pilot to Barnacle. That you're concerned with.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
And future, possibly, future changes to Barnacle Street.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak to these bylaws? If you would like to be on our speakers list, please click the raise hand button at the bottom of the screen if you're signed in using Zoom, or *9 if you've signed in, if you've just phoned in to take part via phone. So I'll ask the second time, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to these bylaws? Please raise your hand to indicate that you'd like to be added to the speakers list, or press *9. Thank you. We have a call-in user number 1. I think we found that during the trial that we did of the setup here, that's actually a landline. So you'll have to give us your name and your phone number, and you're just identified as call-in user number 1. So we can't hear you. It says call-in user number 1 is talking, but we can't hear you. To unmute, it's *6 on your phone. We still can't hear you. So call-in user, could you please try to call in again, and we'll make sure that we don't adjourn the meeting before you get back in.
Could the participant also just try speaking into the receiver?
Okay. So you're unmuted. Could you please speak into the phone and see if we can hear you? It does indicate on the screen that they're talking, but we can't actually hear anything that they're saying. And they are unmuted in our system. Hello?
Ed, Eric.
Yes,
Hello?
Ed, we can hear you.
Okay,
Hello.
yeah. Okay, phone number 604-970-8682. I do
Your
live in
address?
Gibson's, 476 Abbs Road. I also work in Shorncliffe as a maintenance worker. Now, speaking to this, the bylaws, I found a lot of things were disconcerting in the fact that people talked around the bylaws. They talked about other things that they were, they talked about the facility, what it would do, the benefits, those sort of things. And I kind of find it disappointing that the discussion wasn't mostly about rezoning. I mean, there's a lot of issues involved with private and profit, and I don't want to get into those. But it seemed to me that some of the speakers that spoke in favor of were speaking more from the benefits of a new facility versus the changes in the bylaws. But I'd like to make one comment that your last speaker from Delta said was building Trellis will be a nice place considering, phrase that. Trellis will be a nice ending to your life. And that's my comment. If you're looking at private versus profit, you people have to actually take a look. And I'm sorry, I'm not speaking to the bylaws, but that's what it's about. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this bylaw? To indicate that you'd like to speak, please raise your hand or press *9 on your telephone, and we'll add you to the speakers list. So I'll call 3 times for speakers before adjourning. So for the first time, is there anyone else who would like to speak to this bylaw? To indicate your wish to speak, please raise your hand or press *9 on your telephone. Second time, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the bylaw? Again, please press raise hand or *9 on your telephone. Third and final time, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the bylaw? Please raise your hand or press *9 on your telephone. So seeing no other hands raised to speak. Oh, there's one more under the wire. We'll move number 978 into the speakers list. You are unmuted. Please state your name and address, please, for the record. And you'll have 5 minutes to speak.
It's Nancy Friesen, 571 Naylor Road, Seashell. All I'm going to say is just a comment that private for profit is not good for anyone. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this bylaw? Please raise your hand or press *9 on your phone. I'll ask for a second time. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to the bylaw? And third and final time, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to these bylaws? If you do, please raise your hand through the Zoom platform or *9 on your phone. So I'm just going to check and see if there's any further comments that have come through. There are a couple of emails that have come through prior to the end of the public hearing, so those are added to the record. So seeing no further hands raised, I will adjourn this public hearing and remind everyone that no further information is to come forward to council regarding these proposed bylaws. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your comments.